The emperor has no clothes on. The emperor has no clothes on. The emperor has no clothes on. I have to sacrifice my freedom for a feeling of security. Sacrifice my free will so that I can feel a little bit of safety. I have lost all of my privacy. I sit suspicious on a public toilet seat, wondering who may be watching, because even my privates don't have privacy. Instead of improving my living condition, you decide to watch my every move. Even as you say you watch for my safety, you are really watching what I'll do, trying to figure out the newest ways with which you can rape me. We stand victims here of a fraudulent society. One which makes you believe in the impossible and makes you deny the very thing that is real. They convince you have nothing while they take something. They say they can give you everything, but the truth is they can give you nothing. They convince you have nothing while they take something. They say they can give you everything, but the truth is they can give you nothing. So as they dress you, young emperor, equip you to be bourgeoisie, remember that when you are alone, dethroned, you won't want to be an emperor with no clothes on. The emperor is naked. The emperor is wearing his birthday suit. The emperor in his high esteem is an emperor with no clothes on. The emperor has no clothes on. The emperor has no clothes on. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh, oh. Do you remember what happened last year? Not last year, year before in July. Do you remember the looting? Whoa, 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 oh. So we were watching on the televisions, and we were all asking ourselves, why is this happening?
Why?
They want that Insta life. They want that easy come. So they can socialize. So they can feel like they matter. How did it go so far? The lives of the rich from the poor. We cannot act surprised. This day's been coming for long. Upina, kululeko, opela nini, klopego, oh, my babo, oh, my babo, upina, kululeko, opela nini, klopego, oh, my babo, oh. Look at them run, look at them go. Some of them rich, but most of them poor. Well, they're all young. They are the young, also the old. They take as much as they can hold. This day has been coming for long. 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 Oh.
I have a friend who, when he's astounded, impressed, or excited, all he continuously says, it's wow. I think I now understand what wow means. What a beautiful. We are now entering part 2 of our program, and I'm going to call on Me Magauta to please introduce and welcome our special guest from Tanzania. Me Magauta, please.
We have a special guest, an eminent person, for us to carry on with our duties and the mission of NaLHISA. We are doing consultations. We are taking the focus from theory, academic to practical. So the guest who's here has been in everything. He's been in the army, he's been an advisor, and he's also done archiving. So you'll see how valuable he'll be to this occasion from his CV. I'll first read the CV. Joseph Waruna Butiki. Education, he was born 1938. Education, he's got an MA Development Studies at the Institute of Development Studies, University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And then 1973 to 74, Tanzania Military Academic. He's a retired Army Major. That is also important. And 1961 to 63, he was a president of the Tanganyika Student Association at Makerere. In 1961 to 64, he did a BA in History, Economics, and Geography at Makerere University, Kampala in Uganda. Positions. In January to date, he's the chairman of the board of Mwalimu Nyerere. July 2011 to date, chairperson, Regional Civil Society Forum, chairperson, National Civil Society Forum in Tanzania. 2008 to date, chairman and trustee, Mbeza Butete Trust, and manager, Mbeza Schools, pre-primary, primary, and secondary. 1977 to 2022, executive director of the Mwalimu Nyerere Foundation. 2007 to 2008, deputy chairperson of the Lake Victoria Zone, presidential appointed committee to solicit Tanzanian citizens' view on fast-tracking East African Federation. November 1990 to 1997, regional commissioner of the Mara region, and that he held as a cabinet rank. November 1990 to 1996, December, member of parliament as regional commissioner, ex officio. 1990 to 1996, chairman of the Tanzanian Cotton Board. 1988, November to 1990, member of the National Executive Committee, CCM, and regional party secretary of the ruling party of Tanzania, Mara region. 1985 to 1988, principal private secretary and chief of staff of President Alisa Hassan Mwinyi of Tanzania at State House. 1973 to 1974, attended military training at Monduli Military Academy, Arusha. 1968 to 1985, principal private secretary, chief of staff, and personal envoy to President Nyerere at State House, Dar es Salaam. 1965 to 1968, personal assistant, research, he was doing research, to President Nyerere of Tanzania at the State House. 1964 to 1965, assistant government archivist Ministry of Culture and Youth in Tanzania. I will stop there with the curricula. Welcome, Mzee. People have written Mr. Mzee. Mzee is enough. Is like when you say Ntate, Mr. You know, is an honor. It means he's an eminent person in his country. We welcome you. We hope you'll share with us your experiences so that we can be able to carry the missions and objectives of this organization forward. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Zed Baleka Mbete, former Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I'm happy to be here in Joburg, not for the first time. I think this is probably my fourth time, but certainly for the first time, be part of this program of the National Liberation Heritage Institute of South Africa from an invitation of the leaders of this institution. When I was invited to come, I did hesitate because I was not sure what it was all about. And when I read it was about archives, I said, archives? Because I once worked as assistant archivist. Immediately after I had completed my university training in Kampala, Makerere, the first East African university, the only one in that time. And it was not a full university. It was a university college affiliated to London University. So if you visited my room, you'll find my degree hanging on the wall. It's a London University degree. But also I did not know what to say because I was not quite clear about the program. Until yesterday when it became very clear that I was supposed to be talking about collecting archives for a united Pan-African collaboration, breaking the vestiges of colonial occupation, and triumph organization against apartheid, the case of an African conquest. So yesterday I was thinking again about this topic. I thought it had a lot of things to say. But I think most of them have been said this morning when I was listening to what you have been, what was prepared, what was being talked about. But even then, I thought I was not a historian, not even an academic. Actually, from what you have heard about me, almost an ordinary citizen, serving for a long time heads of state. My Tanzanian head of state, Mwalimu Nyerere, for 21 years, you know about him. But also in this country, I worked with President Mandela when he was out of prison, and working with him after Mwalimu, trying to reconcile the Burundi. I got in touch with Mbeki. He used to come to Dar es Salaam and to Zanzibar for a program about peace building and peacemaking. But you can also see in my age, worked with the Jomo Kenyatta's, Obote's, Samora, Nujoma, and all those during those years. Why? Because I was in government 65 to 85. But then the party 88 to 96. And then in this Mwalimu Nyerere Foundation for these years with the population, with academics, religious people, ordinary people, young people, children. So in those capacities, I've been able to collect a little bit of experience, which I want to share. But let me start with two quotations. I may not get them completely accurately. One is from President Nyerere, talking about us. First was a believer that the world is one, humanity is one. The world is one, and humanity is one. When he established this foundation, he says, we wrote books about it. But then he said, you know what we work for, presidents, deputy vice presidents, ministers, ordinary citizens. We simply want to ensure that we live in peace, we live in unity, and that the activities which we carry out, which we say development, those do benefit us, but they must also benefit our neighbors and others beyond our neighbors. So peace, unity, people-centered development is one object of the Mwalimu Nyerere Foundation, but I think also it is an object for which we all work as human beings. Nobody says that they want peace. Nobody says they don't want unity. You cannot live in a bush yourself. And whatever you do, you want to benefit from that which you do. But then Mwalimu continues to say, we Africans, and others maybe, but basically Africans, we've been oppressed for a long time. We've been humiliated for a long time. We've been disregarded, marginalized for a long time. Why? Because of our weakness. He doesn't define what that weakness is. So what must we do? Work to be strong, to run away from our weakness, so that we are not oppressed again, we are not humiliated again, we are not even disregarded again. That's the agenda. If you want peace, that's what we should be doing. But then Madiba came after he was released from prison. In his inaugural speech, now this one, you'll pardon me, I may get it wrong. He talked for so long, and then advised the world community, which was listening to him, in words which I will not quote accurately. He said, never again should one group, one nation, work to dominate the others, and never allow South Africa to be the skunk of this world. That was Mandela. First one was Nyerere, second one was Mandela. Whom were they talking about? They were talking about us, humans. And I think we all, that's what I want to propose, all as human beings, we make a contribution to archives. Living is making your own archive. You think, you plan, you act, you share with the others, and the process, you make a contribution to archives. So archives is about people. It's not about animals, it's about us. All that we do, looked at in historical perspective, that makes a contribution. But these days we tend to look at it in terms of institutions. But it is people-centered. So institutionally, when we talk about archives and historians, networking, I want to propose a second point that historians, networking, should not be limited to South Africa. It is about humanity. History is about humanity. South Africa is a group, Tanzania is a group, Americans a group, Indians, but they're all working in this one world. We are one. And science and technology is helping us to discover more and more that we are one, humanity. We share so much in life. And we continue to share even more as we work in, as we develop more areas in scientific innovation, technological innovation. And we'll come more and more together. And maybe we are going to reinforce what we talk about these days, the globalization. One village of human beings, that's what we are. So, but specifically on this subject, apart from saying thank you to the organizers of NaLHISA, it's a very, very good idea. And my subject, the first part, says, collecting archives for a united Pan-African collaboration. The whole archives for the whole of Africa. The African people are there. If we look at the millions, I don't know how many we are now Africans, 1.4 billion. 1.4 billion in terms of archives. What are we contributing? It's a lot. But if you look at in historical perspective, first, we must say, we were there. We have been there. They came, whoever came to Africa, the geographical Africa, they found people there. And we are part of those people. So we were there, living, making our own archives. But then history came in. We were colonized, dominated, exploited. Historians tell us people came in from where? About Sudan and Ethiopia, and some historians know. I don't want to go into that. The foreigners who came in dominated us. You historians know where they came in and who they were. They made a difference. And we started special type of archives. A people who are governed without their consent. For years, until this process of liberation which we are talking about was started. 4 years. And Nyerere says, because we are weak. Mandela says, and we think he was talking about the colonizers. It was people who were leading in apartheid alone. No, I don't think so. First to those, second to ourselves. Never allow weakness to allow people to govern you. Our ancestors lost. They struggled, but they were weak and they lost. We struggled and won. In a stage like this now, we think we are dependent. But I'm going to show you that we're not quite free or even independent the way we think. They told a story here. So then what happened? They organized Africans in their own little countries, here and there, here and there. South Africa was ruled until 1994. The others organized, they came out of that colonial situation. Then they formed in 1963 the OU, the Organization of African Unity, for two purposes: political independence and then economic liberation and economic independence. Phase 1, we have done. Phase 2, we are still struggling. And because phase 2, we are still struggling. Phase 1 is not steady. We are not steady. Our decisions are not always our decisions. Our actions are not always ours alone. They are influenced sometimes against our own will by others. Why? Because politically independent, yes, but economically, not so. Still struggling. So the OU, and then Liberation Committee, which you know about, the OU, if you read that history, that is archives. It is no longer OU, it is now AU. It is still in Addis Ababa. But even when you went there, the building in which they started is not the same. They are somewhere else. And there is also a huge library there for us to go see. Very big. The headquarters is huge in Addis Ababa. So when you study history, even of those buildings, even in what is in the archives, it's not the same. There are basics, but there are new things there. Why? Because there are new people. The Liberation Committee, you may not know, the Liberation Committee, it was an OU. But who were spearheading it? The Liberation Committee, the OU Liberation Committee. In Lusaka, at a stone, a rock called Murungushi. That's where Kaunda, Nyerere, Selesekam, and some others were sitting. Cold weather. And they formed the Murungushi Club. Read about the Murungushi Club. You'll discover what it did. The frontline states which you hear talking, helping to prosecute, you see, the wars to help those who were fighting, including South Africans here. There was a frontline state. First, Kaunda. Then, Nyerere, chair. Then, Selesekama. And you know Selesekama used to come from his country here. There was, to get there, you had to go through a very narrow corridor. Very dangerous. But he used to come all the way. That is history. That is archives. People may not know about it. And it is important. It is important. The OU the Liberation Committee, the group which worked with the rest of the members of AU, you can see they were all contributing. And then, of course, South Africa. Not fully democratic and independent until 1994. And Mandela was in prison for 27 years. Thabo Mbeki was in Dar es Salaam, sometimes in Lusaka. And you may recall what was happening to Lusaka, Zambia, the attacks, the threats, the harassment from the Boer community here. All that is history, and it is archives. And it has not been studied fully. All the aspects of it have not been studied fully. I think that's what the old man was telling the historians now. It has not been studied fully. Here, in this country, ANC was long, it's the longest political party in Africa. Slightly divided now, but it was one, very strong. Helping to mobilize South Africans to fight for their freedom, to fight apartheid in South Africa. They succeeded in the end. It was their war. Nyerere keeps on saying, we were supporting them. And it's true, we were supporting you. We were not fighting for you. We were supporting for you. And historians don't say that liberation movements fought for South Africa. No, no, no. Liberation movements in South Africa fought for themselves. And the rest of us were supporting them. Supporting them. So we are here today. There's a chapter in the liberation. It's a long one. I did not want to go. The stages of it, you know. But now we have AU, it's there. And the people of South Africa, working with the liberation movements, and those few countries were already independent, like Tanganyika, and the leaders who were working there, those are the ones who broke through their efforts. They broke what you call breaking the vestiges of colonial occupation. They were free, and they helped their brothers and sisters to be free. Now, that solidarity, that unity, ought to be documented properly. It was stronger then than it is today. Let me say it again. It was stronger then than it is today. Why? With some liberators, freedom fighters from here, living first in Tanganyika, then in Tanzania. A very poor country, rich in resources, but poor in many other aspects, but still prepared to live, invite and live with brothers and sisters who were fighting for freedom. That solidarity was very, very strong. And we used to argue about it. We are so poor, why should we spend so much money and time helping South Africans? Nyerere used to say they are our brothers and sisters, we are the same. And freedom will not be complete until they are free. You remember, I used to come here. I once come in Joburg at the airport. There was a small hotel where we were kept. You're not allowed to come here. You have to stay at the airport. Go there, stay in that little hotel, very poor provided, and then go out wherever you're coming from, not here. Today, we are free. Let me say, on a light note, we enjoy, and I do enjoy, South African wine. My assistant always reminds me, what wine? I say, South African. Wherever I go, whatever version I say, South African wine. I'm just addicted to South African wine. And when I see these South Africans in our hotels there, investors, I say, it was a good job, historical job. It should be properly documented. And even when they started coming in as investors to build Sunworth, we have 2 hotels there, and more are there, and very many other investors. We are together. That's what Nyerere told members of parliament when he was here. He told Mandela, apartheid is gone, we are now Africans. Let's work together. And I want to repeat that message to you, South Africans. Apartheid is no longer. You have Africans in Africa. Foreigners will be coming here. Work with all of them. There's another kind of history, and it will have its own archives too. It is history of archives. There's a section. And we normally historians, because we don't have time, you all pile it together. I think what we are saying now is to begin to desegregate this thematic richer, not just put together. So we no longer have colonial occupation. Where is it? We still have part of somewhere. The French are still somewhere, and we are not talking about it. I don't know why. You historians, do you know that the French are still somewhere around? Yes. And it's not over yet. They are somewhere. And we must not forget, you people, when you are independent and free, you tend to forget your other brothers and sisters in some other parts of the world who are still struggling. Continue remembering them and continue organizing to work for them. But shall I ask you to pay tribute to all those who did participate in this process of phase 2 of liberation? Madam Vice President, I think you did. Congratulations, all of you who are here, and all those who supported them. But in terms of groupings, South Africa is our best example of a country which was highly organized, youth, women, old, and I think probably children, working to liberate themselves. To powerful groups, which I'm told they are no longer working together as they used to be. And maybe you think it is over. It is not. From me and an old man, can you remember that? I'm advising you, it is not over. Don't deceive yourselves with what you see. Good roads, good trees, good water, magnificent hotels, industry, beer, wine. Remember, it is not over. So we all of us triumphed when we got rid of apartheid and when we got Mandela out of prison. And he came to become the first president. I understand he argued with Oliver Tambo. Mandela wanted Tambo to be president. Tambo said no, and the argument was there. And then eventually, Tambo gave in. Mandela came in for one term. Would you try and record that? A man who was in prison for 27 years, come out of that prison, and then South Africans, one term, and he goes. Why? This history. The archive should be worked on. Why? Has any of you asked him? He must have argued. He argued. It was one term. But then, from what was happening here, it's also history and the chapter. From what had happened, the operation, and the difficulties faced by Africans here, they thought Mandela was going to organize for revenge. He never did it. There was a time when I came here, let me tell you, there was a time when I came here quietly. I went around in the rural areas. There were several killings there. Mtotism said, no, no, quietly, don't do it. And that made the Mandela we know of today. Oppressed, humiliated, denied freedom, ruling his people, no revenge. And that made for South Africa's peace and unity which you are seeing now. Remember that, don't forget. And when he said never, never, never again, do you think he was talking only about the whites? No. He was talking about all of us. That character of individuals and the groups here in South Africa, in Tanzania, and in Africa everywhere, which is anti-peace. For whatever reason, individual saying I, Joseph Butiku, instead of we, Butiku and somebody else. The we normally gives way to the I. And sometimes the we gives way to the bigger we. And that becomes a bone of contention. Why? History. Can you record that? Can you look at the history and say, why have we drifted from being rational human beings to sometimes very irrational human beings? Do you know why? Rational human beings. And for those who are Christians, love thy God, love thy neighbor. That's not what we do. Why? That is historical recording. And there is an archives of it. If our children could follow that, be honest and tell them why. So let me come to my last point, which I wanted to make. I said it is not over. Economically, we are not there. Who is there in this room? Even the richest in South Africa, they are not there. They may think they are there. They are not. First, alone, you cannot be. You cannot be. You cannot be with the others. But the majority, I was going around yesterday. I saw what Joburg looks like. And then I went to other parts. They've improved tremendously. But the quality of life is still low. If you talk in economics, GDP per capita, GDP national might be good in South Africa. But GDP per capita is not yet. The value of your rand, there was a time when I was here, it was 3. Was it about 3 per dollar? These days, what is it? Yes. And let me tell you what Nyerere told Mzee Mandela when he was here, and members of parliament. South African, don't you think you are big brothers? Yes, because your economy was good, but that economy was for the few. Was for about 4 million people. When that economy is extended to cover the rest, and we are not there, and whose capacity to contribute to that economy through production is not yet up to the standard that is required. They have not been enabled through education, anything, or even freedom, to contribute to the economy, then the totality of that, when it is taken together, it will be low. So we listen. Today, I was listening, South Africa is suffering from problems of electricity. Why? Because many need electricity, not only a few of you. Whatever you do, you cannot support all your industries from anything else except agriculture. All industrial countries, they have to start with agriculture. Here, you're not there yet. And Africa is not there yet. We've not been able even to guarantee our food security. And because we're not there, we have many, many problems. We're not there yet. Why? Why? Hangovers from colonialism. You come in, you want to copy the style of work, the style of life of those who came before you. It is difficult. You cannot do that without abandoning the others. These are hard facts, I'm sorry. I have to tell you. Probably Nyerere would have said it in another language, or Mandela would have said it in another. So I'm a little bit cautious. Because I'm Mzee, but I'm not Mandela. No, I'm Nyerere. I'm not. So I tell you, if you move on and you forget the rest, the gap between you who are here and those who are here, as long as it is big, then it is difficult to maintain peace. And here, there are still issues to be dealt with. Historians, if you can build on the past and look at what you're doing now and project it to the future, in terms of peace and unity and development by all and for all, there is much to be done. Very much to be done. So if this history, if these archives, they are not just for the keeping in stores, in beautiful buildings, to help historians get their PhDs, one or two, but to help the people know who they are, who they were, who they are, who they must be, what they must do, with whom, and why. And that they are not going to be living in isolated nests called Tanzania, South Africa, and what, thinking you can make it. No, you can't. Why? Because the world is so disconnected now. There are people who need what you produce here, and you people need what they produce there. So their life there, whoever they are, Indians, Chinese, all what, interrelated. And it is going to deepen. Interrelated. You're not going to remain isolated here. No. You must prepare to live with the rest of the world, the rest of humanity in this world, and make a contribution to that world. But always keep the struggle, which you struggled for freedom. Keep it. Work for it ceaselessly. Remind those who are against what you're doing that they cannot succeed without you. So we are together. So, linking the past with the present. That is the link. What is the link? remember, we are all human beings. In my language, I say, enye. What do you say in your language? When I say me, I say enye. Me. Yeah. All of you have a way of saying enye, me. All of you have a way of saying awe, you. All of you. And the two, and the three, and the millions. When they say we, they are stronger. That is the real link. And we must all work for it ceaselessly. So let me stop there and say, I had written something, I have not said anything about it, but let me go back and say, let me go back and say what I had not said before. It was with great pleasure to be invited to this distinguished gathering. It was a great pleasure. And a great pleasure to be a participant in this symposium. I've learned a lot. I'll continue learning from South Africa and from this. But make this an African issue. Don't just keep it here. Archives for Africa. If you do archives for Africa, there'll be scattered archives like they are here now. But build one in this spirit for Pan-Africanism. Build one for Pan-Africanism. Once it is built in that spirit, it is going to attract some people to come and use it to learn about Africans, Pan-Africanism, but also about our history, oppressed, whatever it was. And then from those lessons, we can build a better world. Thank you very much.
Mzee Butiku, thank you very much. I couldn't have imagined that after lunch, someone would be able to hold the concentration of an audience as much as you did. Thank you. It would be very difficult to paraphrase or even attempt to summarize what you just shared with us. But maybe one takeaway from me is that Professor Landsberg, you probably would agree that what Mzee seems to be saying, amongst others, is that archives are not a construct of academic investigation of something that could have happened in the past for its own nicety's sake, for its sake, but rather that we are living constituent parts that constitute archives as we live. And perhaps it's going to matter as to how we live. Our archives will constitute a positive heritage or not. That seems to be one of the things that are coming through in his message. We will, as NaLHISA said, take your words and counsel very seriously so that we are able to capture this journey that we undertake as human beings when we seek to capture and provide a scope for the heritage of good archived material which we are constituent parts thereof. The other matter that is also very important to say without summarizing you, because I could never try, but would be on the question of Pan-African and continental project of archiving our lives. You mentioned, and I think most of us will agree with you, that people in the continent, other Africans in the continent, helped our case, not because they had excess or more, but because it was a necessary condition for the total liberation of the entire continent. That it is not because they were privileged or blessed with anything more that they could then say, yeah, but actually, even in their want, they recognize the fact that the continent will remain unfree for as long as one of its own, as in a country such as ours, would continue to be bondaged. We think that message must be remembered, sir, especially now when there's a competition for resources. Sometimes we as South Africans tend to behave in a manner that forgets why is it that the continent regarded our emancipation as being critical and important. Particularly for the young students who are here, this message becomes extremely important. But I think I'm forgetting my role. I'm not a moderator. Let me call on the, and something odd has happened. Yesterday, Mzee, as we are in, two things I must relate, as we are in Hector Peterson Museum, we were not able to do the entire tour. We were only able to do the outside. And guess what? There were more Tanzanians when we were there than there were South Africans. All of a sudden, there was a Tanzanian coming and saying, Mzee, asantas, and so forth and so forth. And maybe about, would I be exaggerating as to say that I think there could have been about 20, or oddly, of Tanzanians who had gone to the Hector memorial site, clearly to evidence part of our historical significance of the June 16 occurrence. And not because they knew that Mzee was going to be there. They actually, he was surprised that they were there.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.